Good evening, hello everyone. Welcome back at my next video, and this time again phrasal verbs, and we continue according to the alphabetical order. So this time I prepared for you the phrasal verb which is very common, very frequent in the English language, fall. Fall is basically, we all know that, irregular verb, so it has the past participle and past simple tense. Fall, fell, fallen. Many people makes a lot of mistakes with that a little bit, because I think it's a little bit similar with feel, felt. That's the irregular verb as well, but yeah, sometimes it can be when the speech is really very dynamic and rapid. Of course, we can slip our tongue and make mistake. This time 14 phrasal verbs, which I'm going to explain in sentences or some descriptions or explanations. So let's go to the list. I've got to prepare the list, and of course you can see that. So the first one is fall down, which is the basic one, and it's very literal, and it means to collapse, to fall down on the floor, to the ground. For instance, he was not feeling very well and he collapsed or fell down. The next one is fall over, which is not so common, and fall over means to topple over, so tip over, yeah? The wind was blowing very strongly and the bicycle fell over, toppled over onto the ground. So something like tip over, of course, when there is a strong wind, yeah, it might happen with many other equipment or meanings or anything. Fall apart. Fall apart, actually, the apart, that preposition, everybody knows what it means in English. It means to go into pieces, to break up, to deconstruct. I made a bookshelf, but when I put some books on it, it fell apart and I had forgotten to put in the nails. Fall about, it's not very common, and fall about, I think it's just phrasal verb which is used actually in a spoken colloquial style of the language, and it means to laugh continuously, to laugh out loud and well, a lot. My friend has a great sense of humor and tells very funny stories. I always fall about laughing at him. So literally you cannot stop laughing as the stories are so funny. Something hilarious. So fall about, you actually just like destroy yourself from laughing out loud and from hilarious feelings. The next one is fall back on, which is also a little bit literal, but yeah, it's a little bit tricky because it means to turn to somebody or something for help when other plans have failed. So you have some plans, you have some strategy, some maybe political move or something, and suddenly it fails. So then you fall back on and you go instead of it to something else, to other plan or somebody else or somebody who can help you. So for instance, keep some money in the bank to fall back on in case you lose your job. So it's like plan B or plan C sometimes. So fall back on means to something else, to some other plan, other strategy. Fall behind, like now in pandemic, a lot of children fall behind and might fall behind because it means to fail to keep up with or to fail to do something on time. So it doesn't mean only in the studies, in school, in academic field, but also in a business, in a job. There can be a backlog. So to fail to keep up, to fail actually in something. Like now, of course, because of the lockdowns and shutdown of the schools, it might be a problem with many children. After losing her job, she fell behind on her mortgage repayments. Yes, that might be also the consequence of pandemic. Or I was ill for 3 weeks and fell behind with my final project. That's a consequence of the sickness or disease, which might be actually a reference to pandemic again. Fall behind. The next one is fall for, and it has two main meanings. A lot of people think that fall for is only like a positive way. No, it might be also very negative. So the first meaning is to fall in love with somebody. We all know that, very commonly used, very, very frequent word. Peter fell for Sarah the moment he saw her. So fall in love. Or to be deceived by something, to be deceived by somebody or by something. So by some strategy which you didn't understand, you fail. So it was amazing how everybody fell for his lies. So it has two meanings and very actually conflicting. Either fall in love fall for somebody, or fall for something, or for even somebody, because when somebody's lying, there is actually some person behind lies. The next one is fall in. Fall in means to collapse. It's not very common, not very frequently used, but yes, for instance, if that is not rectified, the roof will fall in, and eventually the walls, and so on. So fall in like this, for instance, fall like deconstruct, demolish something, fall in. The next one is basically fall flat on, which is metaphorical, very, it's not literal at all, I think. Meaning when someone hopes you do not succeed at something, or if you make a mistake and something turns out to be a disaster, we can say, I hope he falls flat on his face, or he fell flat on his face. So it's something like, I think when somebody wishes to somebody else something bad, and it's something like revenge, and you think that, yes, because he's such a bad personality, okay, like we hope he will fall flat on his face, flat on his face. It's negative, yes. So David did not like Paul. When he heard he was opening a new business, he said, I hope it's a disaster. I hope he falls flat on his face with this. So we all, like, it's something like bad, wishing somebody bad stuff to happen. Something which is not really like, it's mean. It's negative. The next one is fall out with, and that's basically when we have an argument with a friend or family member and we do not talk to them for a long while, we can say that we have fallen out with Mike. So fall out with, that we don't actually communicate, we just like really skip him, and we just didn't actually get along with him, so we fell out with him. For instance, he fell out with his cousin over an argument about who owned the bike. The next one is fall out, which is basically literal. Fall out means something which is not really in a standard line or in standard situations. For instance, the first meaning, soldiers fall out and move out of line. It doesn't mean only about soldiers, but basically, yes, it's coming from the military language. Soldiers fell out and started talking. Or second meaning is to have a row and stop talking to someone, or to quarrel, to have a strong, fierce argumentation. So Sarah has decided to ignore Paula since they fell out last night. Something negative, fall out, like a little bit like have an explosive argumentation, to fall out. The next one is basically fall into, and fall into is a little bit different than fall in, but fall into means to start doing something, so fall into some process, some activity, some course, hobby. He quickly fell into the habit of drinking too much, a habit which lasted over 10 years. And the second meaning means to be divided into categories, into parts, to be divided, to be organized, to be restructured somehow. For instance, the books fall into two main parts. So it means that to categorize the books into some kind of system, structure. The next one is fall in with, and that means fall in with that you agree with him. You are in accord with him, you approve what he or she is saying, so to agree with. It means quite often we can say it quite often in the business area. All members of the board readily fell in with the suggestion, and the necessary expert was quickly engaged. So fall in with, agreed, approved, and being on the same terms, being in accord with. The next one is fall through, and that's basically fall through that something is not really. It has actually literal meaning, because it means to fail to happen, to fail. So we ended up canceling the lunch. The plans fell through. So it didn't actually happen. It just failed to happen. And then there are actually common idiomatic expressions with fall, and I just mentioned two. To fall on deaf ears, in many languages it is similar meaning, and it means that when you make suggestion that you believe is good, but nobody agrees or takes up your suggestion, it fell on deaf ears. It means that you have a suggestion, you have a plan, you have a strategy, but nobody listens because they think that this is not really correct one, or this is not something which would work. Mike suggested that we advertise the new product on the internet, as that is where everyone looks first these days. Nobody agreed, and they advertised on the radio, as they always did. His suggestions fell on deaf ears. So that's just the meaning. I think that these little 3 sentences story rings the bell, and everybody understands what it means. And the last one is, it didn't fall far from the tree. It's actually literal, because in many languages it's very similar how people say it. When someone has a characteristics or a nature that was also part of their mother's or father's character, we usually say, well, it did not fall far from the tree. So actually something that is very similar to your mother, to your father. Sometimes we can say that also in the family, but basically the closest relative family members is your mama and dad. John had a short, quick temper, and he got angry very quickly. His father reacted in the same way when he was young. His grandmother would always say, well, it did not fall far from the tree. Your father was always the same at your age. So this is actually the meaning, yeah? So meaning is that, you are like your dad, you are like your mom. So this kind of way. Yeah, I think that we went through all of them. We can go through quickly also through other examples, but I think this is enough. So I think that when you go through this video more times, you can get actually the point, and you can understand how they feel and how they use the phrasal verb fall. Thank you very much. See you next time.